Welcome to Politics Done Right. We are here with the one and only Greg Palast. Greg Palast is the author of several New York Times bestsellers, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy and Armed Madhouse. You know Palast through his investigative reports for the BBC television, The Guardian, Democracy Now! And Rolling Stone. Palast's film, The Democracy Money Can Buy, or The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, The Case of the Stolen Election, is available on Amazon and Prime or at gregpalast.com and now at politicsdoneright.com. So, folks, we are here with Greg Palast. Greg, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Look, let me tell you something. It's an honor to have you on Politics Done Right. I mean, we've been wanting to talk to you for some time now. I mean, look, I want you to tell me, first of all, how we are going to, when I say we, the people who really win in 2020 are going to really win. Okay. You've been doing a hell of a lot of work on voter suppression, on who really won elections and all of that. I've been watching you for a long time, from back in the days. So let me first ask you a question. The first one, did Donald Trump win the Electoral College as we all believe?
No. That is, if you counted every vote that was thrown away, if you let everyone vote who was improperly denied the right to vote. Basically, you had, I know we use the term vote suppression, but you know, when someone steals your car, you don't say, my car was suppressed. You say it's stolen. People's votes were stolen by the hundreds of thousands in key states. And that's what I detail in my film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, The Case of the Stolen Election. I take you right through it, how it was done. And like you say, it's free on Prime. You can get it from your site. And it's very important that you understand that I'm not talking about the popular vote. We all know that Hillary Clinton.
Notice I asked you about the Electoral College because we know what the popular vote is all about already.
So if it wasn't for this theft of the vote of Black people, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters, and young voters, if it wasn't for that massive wholesale vote theft, Trump would have lost Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, Arizona, Georgia.
Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia and North Carolina. So, you know, yeah, the theft was massive. And I have the numbers for each of those states, by the way.
I saw it on your website, but I have to, you know. In fact, gregpalast.com, I'm going to stick the website that I don't have on the screen right now. I'm going to make sure that when we process this video, we have that website on the screen because your website is very educational and people need to be going over there.
Now, you'll understand that these reports were done for Rolling Stone, for the Guardian newspapers of Britain, BBC television, Democracy Now! And other outlets, but not, you know, you will not find this in the Washington Desk.
And I must stop you right there. Why not? Because Americans need to understand this. I preach all of the times with my independent show here, Politics Done Right. The reason why we have to support the independents like yourself, the independents like Politics Done Right and others, is that folks are not getting the real story. They're getting the canned corporate story. So please tell me, Greg, why is it that your reports, well done, journalistically and otherwise, are not in New York Times, Washington Post, and all these others?
I'd like to know myself because I had to fly. I had to go to England to work for the Guardian newspapers and BBC television to talk and do investigative reporting about my own country. Much of it is that we have a great myth, that we have a great democracy, and any journalist that dares break that BS myth is persona non grata. That's just the darn truth. And so what happens is that, for example, you might have in New York Times a story that these vicious racist voter ID laws suppress, as they call it, the Black vote. But you will never have a story after an election that said, you know, remember that suppression we talked about? Remember the long lines that we talked about? Remember the crazy voter ID registration laws we talked about? They will never say, by the way, if you look at those on those close races, that's what made the difference. They will never, ever say an election was stolen. Never, never. Okay. And in Florida, look at my first major report on elections. Because I was a reporter for The Guardian doing economic investigations, investigative reporting. And my first report on election was in 2000 when I discovered that the state of Florida had removed 58,000 black men from the voter rolls. I wasn't guessing that they were black. It said BLA next to their names. I got the inside lists of the people removed from the voter rolls. 58,000 black men.
Wait.
Yeah.
Are you saying that they were labeled inside what people weren't seeing in the news or whatever as specifically black?
If you look at my film, you'll see the actual list, and it says BLA next to their names. And you know what's weirdly humorous? I kept saying blah, blah, blah. I didn't know what blah, blah, blah meant. And then I saw WHI, a rare WHI for white.
Wow.
Oh, black, black, black. So they identified black voters, and they said, these are guys who've been convicted of felony crimes and can't vote in Florida. And here's what was never reported. Not one single name on that list was an illegal voter. Not one single name, but with all those black men removed, George Bush won the presidency of the United States by winning Florida by just 537 votes after you remove 50,000 black men.
Wow.
Okay? So now here's the thing. Later, the New York Times, 4 years later, count them.
Yeah.
Later, talked about the infamous felon purge of Florida, the illegal infamous felon purge of Florida. That's interesting. How could it be infamous? You never reported it. You never reported it, New York Times.
But they knew about it.
They knew about it. And then the only reason why they were even ready to cite it is that the U.S. Civil Rights Commission said I was 100% correct. And so they were safe because we had an agency say, oh, that's correct. Or you'll get the Brent, or the way they report the news is on one hand this and one hand that. The LA Times told me, and that's terrible. That's one of the worst papers in America. But the Los Angeles Times, an editor came to me and said, you know, we covered your story. We said that black people were removed as felons. I said, no, you didn't cover the story. Because your story said Democrats accuse Florida of removing black people wrongly.
That's how they do it.
Republicans deny it. I said, first of all, I'm not a damn Democrat. I'm a reporter. This is not an accusation. This is a fact. So they say on one hand this and on one hand that. You know, the Democrats say there's gravity and the Republicans say there's not gravity. So who's to say? We're just balancing it out. What? You know, so this is the game that, you know, we have to, that I am stuck with. You know, and my reports, I just did reports from from Georgia in 2018. There the election was stolen. And what was
stop. You're telling me that what's her name really won the election? What's her name?
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams really won the election.
So back in 16, for example, let me just give you one single example. We had two examples from 16 because you asked about Trump. Number one, Trump supposedly won Michigan by 10,700 votes.
Right.
What was not reported is that 75,355 ballots were never counted. I want to repeat that. 75,355 ballots were never counted. 7 times Trump's margin of so-called victory. Now, whose votes weren't counted? They were ballots because they use paper ballots. And I know people think, oh, if you have paper ballots, all your problems are solved. That's just not true because the paper ballots are read by machines, by scanners.
Right.
And the scanners broke down in the city of Detroit.
Of course.
87 machines broke down in Detroit and couldn't read the ballots. Now, you tell me. Yeah, they say, well, we don't know who these ballots went for because machines broke down, couldn't read them. Tell me, in Motown, were those black ballots? Yes.
Of course.
Now, were those Trump voters? Was it a massive number of black Trump voters?
Likely not.
So in other words, if you counted the uncounted ballots, and this is a common problem in America, ballots that are cast and never counted, it's called spoilage. 1.5 million votes are not counted in a typical presidential election because of technical reasons, like a machine breaks down. Okay?
I don't understand what you're saying, though. Are you saying that in Detroit there are 70-something thousand votes that went uncounted because
That's
the
correct.
machines couldn't count them?
87 machines broke down. They couldn't count them. Then Jill Stein, the Green Party presidential candidate, contacted me and had me release the news that she was, they misstated what she was doing, that she was seeking a recount of the votes. Technically, that's what she was doing, but she was actually seeking a hand count of those 75,000 ballots, which were never counted.
Why not? And why haven't the Democrats raised hell about the Michigan 75,000 undercount?
Okay, very good question. Well, local Democrats did. In fact, before the election, the county clerk, it's in this African American county in Detroit, which is Wayne County, said, look, we're broke. Our machines are broken. We need new machines. But remember, Detroit was under occupation.
Right.
The white Republican governor who had seized control of the management of Detroit because Detroit was bankrupt.
Right.
Bankrupted by the collapse of the auto industry. Okay. And remember when Obama bailed out he said he bailed out the auto industry. No, he didn't. He bailed out the banks behind the auto industry, bailed out the bondholders of General Motors, but he never bailed out the workers of the city. Okay. And so what happened, Detroit went bankrupt, was taken over by the white Republican governor who said, no, we're not going to give you money for new machines. They knew in advance, I want to repeat that, they knew in advance machines would break down, and they knew that black votes wouldn't be counted. And I don't think, believe it or not, the Republicans didn't care that black votes wouldn't be counted. So that's how Trump supposedly won Michigan. But you ask about the Democratic Party national. Hillary Clinton watched while the Green Party raised the money and began the count of those uncounted ballots. Trump then went into court in the capital, Lansing, Michigan. And Trump and his lawyers said, Jill Stein has no right to count those ballots because no matter how many times she counts, Jill Stein ain't going to win Michigan. It's the truth. So the judge ruled Jill Stein could not recount those ballots. People think that, there was a recount. It was all cool. No.
Right.
The counting of those uncounted ballots was stopped. Now, Hillary Clinton's lawyers were in the courtroom, and the judge asked her lawyer, how does Secretary Clinton stand on this? Because she does have the right to demand those ballots be counted. And their response is, we are just here to observe. Which, by the way, was her campaign.
Wait. Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. And this is so what's
happening. Is that documented in your film? I haven't seen the film yet.
Yeah. In the latest updated version of the film, just so you know that there is also the latest version of the film, which you get free on Prime, or download, or come to greatpalast.com. By the way, I also have, if you have an organization that wants to watch it, I have a shortened special kind of school and church friendly version, which is also short for discussion. Right. The best proxy money can buy: the case of the stolen election, which was commissioned by the Reverend Jesse Jackson, because he is furious that they did not move to count those black votes.
Okay, so let's stop for a second here. Why exactly would you imagine that Hillary, who is constantly he and hawing about Donald Trump, would have her people not want to show that just maybe she won the election?
Well, a couple things. One, Donald Trump said the election's being rigged and I may not accept the results. And she said, no one in American history has ever challenged the outcome of a presidential election, which means she doesn't know a damn thing about American history. There have been plenty of challenges throughout history to the votes. So number one, she doesn't understand history. Number two, she doesn't care about black votes. It's real simple. She said, by the way, when in the first week when she ran for president, she went to a historically black college, by the way, in Texas, and said, the election was stolen in 2000. I thought, wow, that's the first time I've heard a white politician say anything about what happened in 2000. She said, the election was stolen in 2000. We won't forget it. She immediately forgot it. And when Trump said the election's rigged, I may not accept the results if it's rigged, she should have said, yes, it is rigged. You are rigging it. You and your racist right-wing Republican secretaries of state are rigging this election.
And she didn't.
And she didn't. Instead, she said, oh, I will never challenge the election. So she basically committed herself that no matter what they did to black voters, she wouldn't give a damn, and she would defend the system to her death. And you know what? Like Al Gore did the same thing.
I've spoken about so many times about that. Al Gore never put up a fight.
Al Gore never put up a fight because, after all, he's not black. He became a billionaire, right? Al Gore's a billionaire now.
Yes.
All right? So Al Gore, the billionaire, knew he wouldn't become a billionaire if he challenged the vote. Now, I will say, interestingly, John Kerry, because that election was stolen in 2004 in Ohio by the Republicans,
right.
John Kerry. And I will say that John Kerry said he read my book, Our Madhouse, and now agrees that the election was stolen from him in 2004. And no one talks about that. He doesn't raise his voice about it, but he says, yeah. He does it a very subtle way. He just says, Greg Palast is right.
Now, let me ask you a foolish question. Why is it that Democrats always acquiesce to Republicans stealing the election? Is it the corporatocracy who pretty much runs the show and say, well, if this is the guy we want, that's the guy we have, and maybe we pay you off or make sure that you are happy in your losing status or something? I don't get it.
Well, I don't always get it, but first of all, let me make a distinction. You said, why do Democrats do this? Not all Democrats. Last year, we mentioned Stacey Abrams, who ran governor of Georgia.
Right.
First black woman in American history to run for governor. That actually kind of surprised me. We've never had a black woman ever run for governor.
Right.
And what she said was, I won this race, but I will not be inaugurated because they used racial vote thieving technique to steal the election from me.
Yes, she did.
Now, so she's a Democrat, but let's face it, she's a black Democrat.
Right.
And what we are missing is statements from the Congressional White Caucus. Okay. So Stacey Abrams, and by the way, she formed an organization called Fair Fight Georgia.
Yes.
She has hired my team of experts, just so you know, to go into federal court to change the Jim Crow voting system in Georgia. Now, she cited my reports, which I did for Salon.com and Rolling Stone. And if you go to gregpalast.com, you can see those reports. The Secretary of State, who was in charge of the voter rolls, his name was Brian Kemp, removed 500,000 people from the voter rolls. Brian Kemp was the guy running
for governor.
So now he's in charge. He purges the voter rolls of 500,000 people. And at the same time, while he's running for governor, and with the bleached voter rolls, the voter rolls bleached whiter than white, he wins by a fraction of a percent. Now, I actually sued Kemp in federal court before the election, and I was able to get the lists of the purge voters, names and addresses, and why they were purged. And I hired experts to go name by name through the list, not a statistical sample, but every single name. And on our first pass through, we found 340,134 voters illegally and wrongly removed. Now, the rest, half the rest may be wrongly removed, but we know 340,134. We have their names, we have their addresses. And Stacey Abrams now has their names and addresses, and she's taking that into federal court. Now, they're not going to make her governor because that's race, but she's trying to change the law. But again, it's a black Democratic politician, not a white one. And my investigative work is to try to now expand what we did in Georgia throughout the nation to at least 20 other states where they're trying to steal. And they will steal the 2020 election. They will steal it.
Now, Greg, you are a straight up reporter. Mm-hmm. I am what I call a progressive, a truth teller, but with a progressive bias. So I am biased, unlike unlike you. And I've been telling my people for a long time that whether it's the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, the establishment is all in one the same, and they simply work together. and they take turns. All that good stuff is from what I see, and there's nothing that you've told me thus far that doesn't make that the truth.
Well,
So
there's a major racial divide, and it's not a class divide. Remember,
right,
you should think of vote suppression as class war by other means.
right.
And even though race is used, in other words,
It's just a tool.
black voters, it's going after low income voters,
Right,
in particular like students, poor people, urban dwellers, renters. This is what we saw. Rich black folk, and there aren't many in America, but there are some. Their votes are pretty darn secure. As Obama said the night before the 2016 election in Philadelphia, it only takes a couple of minutes to vote. What's the big deal? Well, because in his neighborhood, it only takes a couple of minutes to vote.
right.
If you watch Best Democracy Money Can Buy, download that thing from Prime or Amazon or whatever, my site, your site. You'll see that in Dayton, Ohio, where 70% of black folk vote early. There was one single early voting station for 8,000 people. The line was 5 hours long. I then went to the white suburbs of Toledo to see how long the lines were there. There was no line, none. There were more poll workers than voters, and if you showed up, they gave you cookies and coffee. And so for rich folk, no matter what their color, it's very easy to vote. And I agree with Obama. It only takes a couple of minutes if you're rich as Obama.
Right.
But if you aren't, you've got a 5-hour waiting line. If you aren't, okay, if you don't have your passport and your chauffeur to hold your ID for you, like Andy Young and Vernon Jordan in Georgia, right? Who were, by the way, for voter ID laws, believe it or not, started out that way.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And because they, like I say, their chauffeurs can hand in their passport and say, "Here's go vote." But if you are a average voter and you don't have those proofs of citizenship, et cetera, and remember, a driver's license is not a proof of citizenship, you're going to lose. Like, for example, in Wisconsin, they said you had to have a state ID, photo state ID. 2 weeks before the election in Wisconsin, which supposedly Trump won by 25,000 votes, okay, in Wisconsin. 50,000 students could not vote because 2 weeks before the election, they changed the ID law to say that a student ID from the University of Wisconsin, this is a color photo ID issued by the state, they could not use those student IDs to vote. But you can use a gun license. So if you carry a book, can't vote, carry a gun, you can vote. That's how Trump won Wisconsin. And in Indiana, which should also be in play. Remember, Obama won Indiana in 2008.
He did, yes.
People forget that. They say, "Oh, Indiana, that's the state. That's solid red." No, it isn't.
There's Gary, Indiana, and he won that big.
Yes. So Obama won 2008. Why didn't he win 2012? The answer, because in 2009, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Indiana could impose the nation's first ever photo ID law. Wow. We didn't have it. This republic stood for 200 years without photo ID, and suddenly Indiana said you have to have a photo ID to vote. 80,000, and I want to repeat that, 80,000 black folk did not have the proper photo ID. Because, people who don't, they said you could have a driver's license, but that means that people who don't drive, who are people without cars, who don't have licenses? Poor folk, people who use buses, urban folk. In other words, black, Hispanic, poor, young voters did not have that ID to vote. 80,000 missed their vote, and that flipped the state from Obama to the Republican Party.
You know something? I think you just gave a classic example of how you can steal an election legally. That stuff in Indiana with Obama, and we never even think about Obama losing Indiana being an issue because he ultimately won the election. But suppose.
Now you're showing. Now you have up there the book, "The Best Democracy Money Can Buy," and which was originally written. The one you're showing is the 2016 update. In 12, I wrote the book. I wrote a book, "Billionaires and Ballot Bandits," and it described how in 8, Obama won, but 5.9 million votes were stolen from him. He just overwhelmed the steal. And just so you know, my co-writer, Bobby Kennedy, because we were writing together for Rolling Stone, he could do something I couldn't do. He called up Obama and said, "What do you think of that?" And Obama knew all about the techniques of vote suppression. He knew all about my work. But he wasn't going to say anything. One, because he didn't want to be, if he complains about vote theft, they'll say, "Oh, it's the race card."
Right.
So he said, what you have to do is just overwhelm them.
Obama, he says that everywhere. When we talk about voter suppression stealing 2% of the votes, he's always saying what we need to do is work on people going out there to vote. But for these techniques that you are talking about right now, we're talking more than 2% now.
Well, here's the thing. Is that I figure it's about, the steal's about 5%.
Right.
And now they can't, first of all, that's important. They can't steal all the votes all the time. That's very, very important to understand. And Obama understood that you can overwhelm the steal. All right. The problem is you have to fight on all these fronts. Yes, you have to say, okay, they're going to try to steal my vote, but that shouldn't stop you from voting because you can overwhelm it.
Right.
They're going to make you stand in line. So stand in line. They're going to make you get an ID. Make sure you have that ID. Okay. And finally, they've purged. Are you ready for this? In the past 2 years, the states have removed 14 million people from the voter rolls. That was just reported by the Brennan Center for Justice. 14 million people have been removed from the voter rolls. I would say a good half of them were wrongly removed, people who will be shocked and surprised when they show up that their names are no longer there, including, for example, go to my website, you'll see a video of a 92-year-old woman who was denied the right to vote after voting in the same polling station for 50 years. This was her 50th year of voting in Georgia. She was missing and struck from the voter rolls. That's Martin Luther King's cousin.
Wow.
Okay. And so what I'm telling people now, and you'll see this, it's a 59-second film. Go to greatpals.com. You don't want to miss this because it'll break your heart. But I'll tell you this. I'm telling you now, don't break your own heart. Don't steal your own vote. I want everyone to go and check, and especially if you're in the state of Texas, my God, go and check your voter registration online and make sure you're still there 60 days before the election.
And you know something that is great, Greg? You have on your website, you actually have a link that just about everybody can check their voter, whether they're registered to vote or not, right?
Yes, and yes.
Does it apply to 50 states or all 50 states don't allow it?
There are 50 states. All 50 states have a state voter registration list where you can check your name to make sure that you are listed under your proper name and spelling, your proper address, so you don't get shifted. And the other thing that happens, people will show up and they'll say, "Oh, you're registered, in another town." They say, "Well, I haven't lived there for 20 years. Too bad." So check in advance. By the way, even in California, wonderful progressive California, they play all kinds of games here. And I checked my registration while I was on, while I was on the air.
You were checking it.
On the program Flashpoint, which is played in Texas.
Yeah.
I checked it on the air and it said, "No such voter, Greg Palast." And so I re-registered right there. And that's the other thing. Please register online. I know some of you go to the DMV, get your license renewed, and you register there. That's a piece of paper in most states. Those pieces of paper are almost half of them are thrown out. I want to repeat that. About half of them are thrown out for all technical reasons. So you think you're registered because you went to the DMV? Forget about it. Okay, you better check it. So number one, check your registration. Check the people in your family. If you know their birth dates and their addresses, got someone's full name, address, birth date, you can check their registrations for them. And if they've been wiped out, removed, mucked with, just tell them to re-register. It's the best way to defeat these games. So there's things you can do But the idea that the Democratic Party should ignore things, and there's certain things that Obama said that unfortunately I'm restricted from not saying on the air.
I got it.
But I can tell you this, he does tend to blame the voters for losing their vote. And I'm sorry, Christine Jordan, who's 92 years old, voting in the same place, this is going to be her 50th year. It's not her fault.
Well, I mean, we can think in two ways, right? In other words, the younger folks, like I am an activist here in town, and when I'm talking to a whole lot of people, I don't vote, it don't count anyway. So those are the folks that we are working on to try to tell them, no, it will count if we all get together and do it. Now, I mean, with all the work that you do, you're the ultimate voter guy in this country, the guy who's been doing all this investigation unlike just about anybody else. And I'm talking in mass. You need a widget. You need to put out a widget that we can put on all these different websites. You know why? Because there are a lot of organizations that are coming up right now. I work with them with the Coffee Party USA and others that they're there, but there are these NGOs that come up with this elitist type thing. And you've been out there doing the work. So I'm going to tell you, Greg, get a darn widget.
Well, what I do tell people, I would love to. I got to get some funding for that, but I do. You go to GregPalast.com. I have a lot of states where I have the purge lists up, and you can look up your name from the top of my site, the purge list. Look up your state. I have about a dozen states where you can see if you have been removed. And we got those by suing all those states like North Carolina, Nevada, Indiana, Illinois, other states. So you can definitely look those things up. But I'm telling you, just check your registration. And I know, yes, they do steal about 5% of the vote. Okay, so I'll agree with Obama on one thing. If they steal 5%, you better show up with 6% more.
There you go.
You go. But I also say, no, we're not going to let them steal it. If someone's picking your pocket, you don't say, okay, well, here's my wallet. No, right. You slap their hand and say, I'm going to break your face.
And that is why the work that you're doing is so important. You know, what I want to do here is, first of all, as far as the 2020 election, what are the states that we have to be most concerned about?
North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia.
Virginia?
Yes, Illinois, because they play games there. Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and especially Ohio and Arizona.
Wow.
That's massive.
Oh, boy. Oh,
massive.
Boy.
And so we got a lot of work to do because all these states are going to be in play. All these states have a history of knocking out voters of color and young voters. And of course, I should add, excuse me, I left out the big one, Florida. We'll be back fighting over Florida. Now, how the heck did Donald Trump win Florida when Obama won that state twice? Really? The answer is, once again, that the amount of vote suppression there is massive. And a lot of it is directed against Puerto Ricans who came in mass. Almost 500,000 people left Puerto Rico. Moved to the U.S., to Florida. These are American citizens with the right to vote, and they've done everything in the world to prevent them from voting. And because they know how they vote. So how do you have an influx of 500,000 Hispanics in just a few years, and suddenly Donald Trump wins the state? The answer is they're stopping people from voting. They're accusing people from Puerto Rico. They're saying, prove you're a citizen because your last name is Hernandez. We're not Red China. We don't have citizenship cards.
Okay, well, let me tell you, we are getting close to the end, Greg, and I needed to do something for me important.
Okay.
Tell me list for me, what are the forms of voter suppressions that, and generally people don't see it as voter suppression. So give me that list.
Wow. Okay. So you have that book up. It says How to Steal an Election in 10 Easy Steps. So there's at least 10. They use a gimmick called interstate cross-check. They use purging because they use something called use it or lose it. You don't vote a couple times. They send you a postcard. You don't return the postcard, and you lose your vote. That's illegal, but they do it anyway by the millions. Voter ID laws, spoiling your vote so that you vote on bad machines that don't get counted. Don't mail in your ballot if you can avoid mailing in, because they disqualify about 1 in 7 ballots. And by the way, who gets disqualified? 900% more likely your vote will be disqualified if you're black than if you're white. 900%. That's the official calculation by the United States Civil Rights Commission. So don't mail in your ballot because they'll throw it away. Okay. If you can avoid it, that's the only way to vote. Don't throw away your vote by not sending it in at all. Okay. Don't, and of course, vote. The other is if you vote and they say your name's not here, you'll get a provisional ballot. Don't worry, we'll count it. That's a lie. They throw those ballots in the garbage. 2.7 million provisional ballots don't get counted. Okay. They say, oh, you forgot your ID. Don't worry. Don't go home and get your ID. Just give you a provisional ballot. They're not going to count it, my friend. Don't take a provisional ballot. It's the back of the bus ballot. And I can't think of all 10 right off.
Right, but we'll put the book under this blog post to make sure people get the book.
Okay, so protect your own vote. That's your job. Protect your family's votes, and please watch the film to get an idea and pass it around. Like I say, if you go to my site and if you have an organization or group that wants to show the best democracy money can buy, the Jesse Jackson Activist Edition, let me know. We'll send that to you. We have posters and everything else because we are trying to get the word out, how they take your vote and how you can steal it back.
This has been Greg Palast. Greg Palast is one of the, I think one of the most important investigative reporters in the country. Because of his position, many folks who should be covering his material, it doesn't get covered. But you know what? Independent media will continue to cover you, Greg. We will make sure that all that great information that you impart on us continues to be imparted. I thank you so kindly for being a part of Politics Done Right, for being here. And I know that the wisdom that you brought us, we are going to make sure to put it to good use.
Thank you very much. And do support this program. I mean, it's a rare and precious thing where you get this type of in-depth discussion, detail, information you just don't get from the usual blather on these talk shows and on MSDNC or something. This is very, very special. This is unique, and I hope that you, if you're watching or listening, that you value this very precious program.
Greg Palast, thank you so kindly for being here.
You're very welcome. Bye.